Ігоре, слава Ісусу Христу!
Слава навіки!
Вітаю вас сьогодні. Дякую, що ви погодилися так майже в останню хвилину. І ми розпочнемо зараз з молитви. Я знаю, що кілька людей, які дивляться будуть дивитися наш бродкаст, то вони якраз є більшість англомовних. І тому, напевно, що ми будемо розмовляти більше англійською мовою через те, що це є англомовна публіка.
Me, I know English. It's my second language.
Okay. So I wanted to say that I would like to welcome Father Ihor Kutash, who had had graciously agreed to talk about Hryhoriy Skovoroda today, and his thesis was on Hryhoriy Skovoroda, if I'm not mistaken. Am I?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so on Hryhoriy Skovoroda, and I was just telling him before we started the broadcast that what led me to ask him to talk about Skovoroda is that in our church we have a library books, that we're sorting out, and we have lots of books that we are willing to give it to people's libraries if they are because we don't want them to be orphaned and staying just in our library. We wanted to share, and I found Father Yarmus's book about Pamphil Yurkevich, and I didn't know who the guy was, and I started reading it, and I thought, well, we actually have somebody who's knows quite a bit about Skovoroda and his writings, and I was hoping that Father Ihor can share with us that wisdom and knowledge. Почнемо, отче, тоді з молитви, з вашого дозволу. В ім'я Отця і Сина Святого Духа, амінь. В ім'я Отця і Сина Святого Духа, амінь. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, амінь. Отче наш, що єси на небесах, нехай святиться ім'я Твоє, нехай прийде царство Твоє, нехай буде воля Твоя, як на небі, так і на землі. Хліб наш насущний дай нам сьогодні, і прости нам провини наші, які ми прощаємо винуватцям нашим. І не веди нас у спокусу, але визволи нас від лукавого. Бо Твоє є царство, і сила, і слава Отця, і Сина Святого Духа, нині повсякчас, на віки вічні. Амінь. Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй, Господи, помилуй. Всечесний Отче, по-французьки нас поблагослови.
Bénis Seigneur ce discours que nous avons ce soir parce que tu es bon et que tu aimes le monde maintenant et toujours et dans les siècles des siècles. Amen.
Дякую, Отче. Дякую дуже. I wanted to, for those who watching our conversation, I just wanted to mention that if you post your questions in English and let us know which language to use, we'll do that in that language. For now, it is my understanding that majority of people that are watching would like to have it in English. That's why we'll do it in English language first. However, if you type it and let us know that you would like some information in Ukrainian, but that's Ihor is a universal speaker in both languages.
I can manage. Well, Ukrainian is my first language.
Добре. Отже, tell us a little bit about Hryhoriy Skovoroda and what led you to be interested in his writings.
Well, my family came from Ukraine in the 1920s, and they would often give various aphorisms which they attributed to Hryhoriy Skovoroda. So I was interested in him. And when I was choosing a topic for my PhD thesis at the University of McGill in Montreal, I decided that this would be a good choice. It would give me the opportunity to learn more about him and to spread knowledge about him in the community. And one of the other things is that I needed to get a PhD, I needed to have a second language for research. I had English, I had French. I thought perhaps I could try some German. I actually consumed in a month, I consumed a book on a German translation. But when it came down to it, I couldn't manage it. I couldn't hack it. German was too complicated. so I asked, well, could I use Russian? So they said, well, okay, if providing you can pass a test in Russian, and I did that, and so they let me do it. So therefore, in order to do that with Russian, I was able to do the work of Hryhoriy Skovoroda. Having said that, Father, it is often said that Hryhoriy Skovoroda is the father of Russian philosophy, and it's sort of true. But the thing is that he himself was not Russian. He was Ukrainian. He was part of course, at that time, that part of Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. He was from eastern Ukraine. He in the Poltava region, and he taught philosophy in Kharkiv. So the language that he used in writing, and he has quite a bit of writing. He used a kind of a strange sort of writing. It was primarily Church Slavonic, but also Russian, also Ukrainian. So in order to decipher what he was writing, it was useful to know all three of those languages. Now, he also very often quoted from writings in Latin and in Greek, and yes, and sometimes even in German. He was a very erudite man. He spent a great deal of time in St. Petersburg in Russia. He also spent some time in Hungary, and he was a voracious reader, and mastered a good deal of knowledge at the time. Among other things, he also was a composer. As a matter of fact, one of the Hryhorymska Pisni, the cherubic hymns that we sing in church, is called Skovorodinska. The melody was composed by Hryhoriy Skovoroda. He also wrote poetry. In other words, he was a very well-rounded person. He did not marry. There was a time when he was already engaged to be married, and the evening before the marriage was to take place, he ran away and did not go through with the marriage, and spent his life. He was born in 1722, died in 1794, so that would make him, what, 72 years old? The age I am now, actually. He spent that life simply teaching, going various places, and when the time he didn't really own any property. He had some really good friends, among them a chap called Kovalinsky, to whom he dedicated some of his works, and those friends were very gracious and happy to have him living at their place. And when the time came for him to die, it was also a very interesting thing. He came to the table. He spoke with his friends, and he said, "The time is come for me." So he ate his meal. He went to the room in which he was staying, lay down, dressed himself properly, nicely, washed and dressed himself, lay down on the bed, and died. Before he did that, though, he did something else. He actually took a spade and dug his own grave, so people would not have to dig a grave for him. So he lay down, died, and was buried in that grave, which is quite an unusual situation. There are those who say there's all sorts of interpretations of his philosophy. There are those who say that it was his philosophy that inspired the Bolshevik Revolution, that it helped to inspire that. because it is possible from his writings to, it was a kind of a pantheistic worldview that he gave, to say that really, you know, there's a kind of a predetermined order to things, and things are going in this particular direction, and so on. And so from that, those who believed in Marxism, that's what Marxism is about, is that there is a predetermined order, things are moving forward, and so on. However, to say that there are even those who say that he was an atheist. The communists made a great deal of him. They published his works, and among other things, they permitted his works to be published, the original works even, and gave various interpretations to show that he was an atheist. He was definitely not an atheist, and as a matter of fact, one of the very interesting things is that he, when he wandered from place to place, he always had a bag with him, a knapsack with him. And in that knapsack, there was always a Bible. Now, an atheist is not going to be carrying a Bible around with himself. It is true that he did not, he was not a churchgoer. He did not very often go to church, but he was he even was he is often quoting the Bible, quoting the Psalms, and so on. His theology was really not Orthodox Christian theology. At the same time, it is possible to find some really good enlightenment in the things that he says. Among other things, his main focus is that that the physical world is a manifestation of the spiritual world. In other words, his idea was that it is not the material that is solid, it's not the earth that is solid, right? It is the spiritual world that is really solid, and that this physical world is actually kind of a shadow cast by that spiritual world. Of course, you hear some Plato there, right? His idea about the creatures in the caves. Yeah. So, and that was sort of his approach. He's a very interesting man, and I would recommend people to read him. I think it's not something that you can't really guide your life by that, but there are interesting ideas that he gives. Among those things is in our time, when there was this inordinate preoccupation with material things, with the physical, he provides an interesting alternative to it that people don't often think of.
Okay.
So that's in short. For my work, by the way, I primarily focused on one of his works called Narkis, which is in the Ukrainian version of the name Narcissus. And there is a legend in Greek tradition of a young man who looked into a stream and saw his reflection and fell in love with that reflection and pined away, would not stop eating, drinking, having fellowship with him, because he felt so much in love with that reflection. And I suppose the understanding would be that, and from that comes the word narcissism. And a narcissist is not considered to be a good person. It's not a good quality to be completely focused on yourself and not think of other people, right? But Skovoroda saw something different in that story of Narcissus. He says what really happened is that this young man wanted to find out who he really was. What is his source? Where does he come from? What is this all about? And as he did that, he found incredible depths. Now, what are those incredible depths? Well, as Christians, and there's even a hint of that in Skovoroda, we believe that those depths are there because of the fact that we are made in the image of God. God is infinitely wise, infinitely beautiful, infinitely desirable. And if a person truly finds, when you look within yourself and you look what the real source is, the source is not I, the source is not myself, the source is God. So in Skovoroda, in Narkis, he felt that what happened was not that he fell in love with some sort of a physical manifestation of what a person is, or even a intellectual, but something spiritual, something profound. And that was his point in this work, Narkis.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it has a subtitle. It says Narkis, or Uznai Sibya, or get to know yourself, which is, of course, Socrates, right? Socrates said that the greatest thing we must do is to know ourselves. So, and the other thing that I did, I also translated into Ukrainian, or rather into English, I did translate Narcissus in Narkis in English. I also translated a short conspectus of the coursework that he taught the students on ethics, moral philosophy at the Kharkiv University. So those are two things that I have translated into English from the original language, and they are to be found in the library at McGill University.
Which, as you beautifully present us about interesting history of Hryhoriy Skovoroda and his workings and his really diverse personality and diverse work, I found on YouTube a beautiful hymn. It's called the Hryhoriy Skovoroda Kharkivsky hymn, and that is sung by Kievsky Kamerny Chor. I'll try to interject it here, if you don't mind.
Certainly, please.
I'm hoping that I will be able to do that, but if not, forgive me for this.
I know at St. Sophie Cathedral we used to sing a cherubic hymn that was from Skovoroda, his composition.
Okay, we have a little bit of a technical difficulty, so forgive me for this. It'll take me a little bit longer, than I thought. If you can just say, some of the aspects of his, what is interesting to me, because quite often in his work, Metropolitan Anthony Bloom talks about Hryhoriy Skovoroda, and he talks about, his відречення від світу цього, his denunciation of this world, Did you find any of that reference in his work or not?
Well, one of the things is that he directed what sort of inscription should be on his grave. So it was Hryhoriy Savich Skovoroda, 1722-1794, and the aphorism that he had there is, "The world chased me but could not catch me." Світ мене ловив, але не впіймав. So clearly it was his path was a mystical and spiritual path, and he would, among other things, he would love to go for long walks into the fields or into the forests and spend hours, communing. I would say communing with God, right? I don't know how he. How to, for every person it is a different thing, but obviously it was something that gave him great joy, great peace, and actually made him a very attractive person. Attractive not in a physical sense, I'm not sure, although there are portraits of him which are available, but attractive particularly he was the type of person that people would flock to and love to listen to, and apparently a very popular man.
So I found that our video. Let me just introduce it into our stream and see if it's going to be can be watched. Oh,
okay.
That's not the video. That's me. and now here it
Well,
is.
but he is that is a portrait of him, of Hryhoriy Skovoroda on there.
I find it to be very quiet. Can you hear that, Orche?
I can't hear it at all. No, I can't hear the music at all.
Okay.
Maybe
Sorry,
what you could do is, at some point, you could just post the link, and people can
that's what
can
that's
find
what,
it for themselves. Oh, I see. There is a link. No, that's not it. That's not it.
Okay.
There's a
I
link on
will
the
just
bottom,
post
but that's the link to this.
Okay. Well, anyways, we'll continue our conversation, but unfortunately, the Hryhoriy Skovoroda, it's playing on the background. It's beautiful sound, and unfortunately,
Mhm.
not very, not very loud one, So
Yeah, I can't hear it at all.
because
But I
they
am
also
looking
have
forward to.
there's also that.
Okay. So obviously, even though he was not a very frequent churchgoer, but he did love the Orthodox liturgy because to compose the music for Hryhorymska Pisya indicates that he found it something worth doing. So it definitely far from being a materialist. Although he's also called a materialist. He's definitely not a materialist,
Oh, it's interesting.
and definitely not an atheist.
So it's interesting what made him what made him be called a materialist, actually, because when you read his not read, sorry, I didn't read much of Skovoroda until what was taught in the church school curriculum when I was in school in Ukraine yet during the Soviet times, and he definitely was portrayed as a future leader of proletariat that had built a foundation for пролетарсько-християнської пролетарсько-селянської революції, знаєте. But everything that we were taught was, of course, the foundation of that, But
well, when you say materialist, it doesn't mean that materialists say that there's nothing which is not material, right? Which is beautiful and wonderful. As a matter of fact, what they say, what seems to be spiritual and mystical beauty is simply a function of matter. Okay, that matter is the main thing, and the spiritual and all that. That's the main thing. Well, Hryhoriy Skovoroda was, on the contrary, he was you could say more, he was a Platonist, saying that matter itself is a function of spirit, not that spirit is the other way around, which is what materialists would say, right? That what we think is spiritual is just a function of matter, right? What we are thinking, doing, writing, experiencing, it's simply because of the fact that we are material beings, right? He would say the opposite. He would say what is material and all that is actually a function of, is a reflection of the real thing. The real thing is the spirit. That's what he would say.
It's interesting, that in right now there's a big revival of Hryhoriy Skovoroda and his philosophy, and even he was taken as a benchmark, for honesty, for that matter. And there's a громадське телебачення in Lviv took called is called, one of the programs is called Skovoroda, Radio Вільних людей, a radio of free people. and they called Hryhoriy Skovoroda as philosopher of heart, freedom and
Mm-hmm.
equality. Freedom and equality. That's why they call their radio as a free as a radio of free people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how it is.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay, I see.
they believe that that there's the radio should be free of any censorships. Should be casual, like in jeans, quality, quality of stuff, good music, very colorful personalities. Expert thoughts and maximum grassroots, basically. Like, so close
Mm-hmm.
connectivity with people. Reflect the views of people. And to tell you honestly, because I have heard their radio programs, they are really sometimes, would even think that they are obnoxious, because they're so brutally honest and close, but at the same time, we need sometimes that honesty, and perhaps a constructive honesty, not criticizing,
Yeah.
but constructive honesty. So that's how it is.
Okay, so Hryhoriy Skovoroda was not interested in being politically correct, right?
That's right.
He was definitely interested in getting at the truth, but saying getting at the truth, that did not mean that he would reject faith and mystery and so on. On the contrary, that would be the deepest, the profoundest truth that you could have.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting, but that radio that is had been kind of founded at Lviv National University and Ukrainian Catholic University. Uh, it's they had a really rough time of. They still have a rough time, because they do not. You can donate to their cause, but they do not necessarily going to be talking nicely to you because you gave the money. If you did
Uh-huh.
something wrong, right? So they basically
And
say free of chains of not materialism, but free of chains of entitlements, kind of thing. So, and they believe that they found that part in the philosophy of Hryhoriy Skovoroda.
yes.
It's again, sorry.
An interesting thing is another metaphor that he used for talking about the superiority of the spirit to the matter, although that matter is really important. But what he said was that the spirit is the head and matter is the tail. If you're talking about an animal, a lion, whatever, the spirit is the head, the matter is the tail. That is the most important thing.
Well, can you talk about it, a lion or an animal, or you can talk about the divine and I guess profane maybe too. Not profane, but uh, who has the tail, so, and then who's and the matter is that is bright, the голова. Розум є великий, а тіло є те, що склонне до гріха. I don't know, you're an expert, but I'm just gonna.
Well, I think that the story about a person is truly manifests who they are when the time comes for them to leave this world, and so when you see the way he prepared and the way he died, having dug his own grave, lying down on the bed, getting dressed and all that, and just dying. That's another thing they say about people who are very spiritually alert, very spiritually alive, close to God, is that they seem to know the time when the time has come for them to die, and that was the thing to him. With him, he actually told his friends, he says, "It's time for me to leave," and he left. So that in itself is a very inspiring situation. But there was a film some years ago. It was called, oh my gosh, what was it called? Ostrov, the island, right? And there is the hero of that film, a chap who at first he did something very bad, killed somebody, and then he became a monk. Pardon me.
He thought all his life.
Oh yeah, he actually thought that he'd killed somebody, and it turned out that he had not killed that person, but he thought he had, and so he went into a monastery and spent a long time in the monastery. And then they show in this film when he is again the same thing. He is digging a grave, and he goes and he lies down in the grave, and he folds his hands over his chest, and he's gone. Just the way that Hryhoriy Skovoroda would have died.
Well, we know that
a lovely film, by the way.
We know that
with a very famous Russian actor. I forgot his name.
Mamontov.
Mamontov. That's it. Yes, Mamontov.
So it's interesting that the way that Skovoroda died. There's a number of elders in mountain Athos. They also do lay down and in a casket on a grave. And as they're ready to die. And one of those things why they do it is because they didn't want to trouble brother monks. Was the looking after the body. They're just already in a casket. So that's how it is. Which, by the way, when you started talking about this movie Island, Ostrov, it is in Russian, but it has English subtitles too. For
yes, and you could find it on YouTube, I believe.
Yeah. So
the Island.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so interesting is because at the end of his life, well, there's this lots of teaching moments that he has. So
absolutely.
Abbot of the monastery comes to him. He says, "Well, I'd like to be with you, the holy man, because it's lonely in my cave. I'd like to kind of just be here because you're here at the place where they heat up the entire monastery. It was cold. So he wakes up. The abbot of the monastery wakes up in the middle of the night, and that monk, that we're talking, the main hero of the movie, cuts his boots and throws in the fire. And the abbot goes to him like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?
That's right.
So and so gave it to me for my sick legs, And he says, No. Don't you see here written all the sins of your soul? You need to burn it. You need to suffer." It was
because they were very luxurious boots.
That's right.
And that's it. Yes.
That was one of those moments, and also the other moments when he is talking to this lady who was possessed, right? Remember the end of the movie, and he found out that her father is the man he thought that he killed. That the general, that Soviet army general or something like that.
Yes.
The whole point of that movie was that he realized that he didn't kill. He prayed for forgiveness for killing the man, and he finds out that he did not kill the man.
And he had not killed him. That's it.
And it was the way he exclaims at the end. He says, "It's the biggest joy of my life. Lord, I'm ready. I'm ready to be accepted, be taken."
And as a matter of fact, when he shot him and he fell down, apparently that actually saved him, because other people thought he was dead, and they simply left him there. So so in other words, he had, even though he thought he did a terrible thing, on the contrary, he actually saved the man's life. And then finally, when they meet at the end, the man says to him, he says, "You can be at peace, brother. You can be at peace."
Yeah, but the man, so he trying to convert this general, the Soviet general, to Christianity, to Christ, and he says, "I can't," because he realized that he's gonna lose his head, and as a Soviet official, if he does something to such extent, as accept faith kind of thing also. But it also provided a really interesting point of view that you saw the man was a miracle worker, that had a very righteous life, was an eccentric, of course, because he confessed his faith, but very much in actions, and lots of people were brought to him from all across the former Soviet Union, to be cured and stuff like that, So he provided really interesting phenomenon, is that about duality in the Soviet Union. There was an official line, party line that was kind of spread out all over the world, And there was always an undercurrent, there was always that, even though it wasn't professed as a faith, it was, how would you say that? One time, many years ago, that phenomenon was described to me by one of my colleagues from St. Andrew's College, one of my peers, students, Andriy Sirko, and he said, "Мы православні атеїсти. We are an Orthodox atheists." So it was interesting because 75 years of the Soviet Union, lots of things had been derooted from our personalities, and lots of bad habits had been installed, and yet, somewhere I don't know, on the fringe of the souls, that faith had been hanging on to, and people were just kind of hanging on to that faith as well. So it's kind of interesting. Is there any so Ivan Romanko made a comment. The Garden of Divine Songs and collected poetry of Hryhoriy Skovoroda has in Glasgow publications, so I'm not quite sure if you are familiar with that.
That's one of his works is Sad Божественних пісней. So that it's obviously been translated into English. There's a number of things. The ones that I translated about Narcissus, which I think is one of his primary works. Unfortunately, it's not been published. But it can be gotten at McGill University in the archives, and my doctoral dissertation on him as well is available there.
And what are the main points of your dissertation, Otche? If you just
talking about him, giving his life story, and above all, pointing out the key message of his teaching is that one needs to become truly aware of what is really real, and what is really real is not that which is obvious, but that which is at the bottom of all phenomena, which is the spirit.
Wow, that's very potent. Знаєте, отче, sorry, I have to speak in English, but just wanted to let you know that whenever I supply teach as a teacher, at public school board, or whenever I view the curriculum about different subjects, especially history, I'm very much or history of civilization, or geography even, and stuff like that. I'm very much how do you say it? Zdivovanий, surprised, how history curriculum, how exclusivist it is, even till this day, And the reason why I'm saying that is because, we learn about Western, like ancient civilization, Rome and Greek and Rome and stuff like that, We talk a lot about the Western Europe and colonization of North America. Thankfully, we now talk more about First Nations, and how they inhabited and stuff like that, And very little, sometimes briefly, we talk about the rest of the world, And I do believe that we have a very unappreciated understanding of the rest of the world, which includes part of the world where your ancestors, or where I am from, from Ukraine. And that's one parts of that need for that type of conversation that we have today is to let people know that, Ukraine did have, even though it was always under somebody's footstep, under somebody's foot, it had some really prominent and interesting and gifted contributors to this world's history and civilization, and one of them is, of course, Hryhoriy Skovoroda.
Yes.
That's my 5 cents I wanted to add to this.
One of the things with returning to the idea of narcissist, of narcissists, if Hryhoriy Skovoroda had really been, in fact, simply somebody just concerned with himself and with what a wonderful, great person he was, he would not have taken the trouble of writing this work and the other works that he did. He really, truly wanted to teach other people. He obviously also thought that a good many people would not understand and would not appreciate. He did believe there was a bit of elitism there, where he felt that some people were simply designated to pursue the higher realms of spiritual awareness and scientific awareness and so on, and other people were simply created to till the earth and to raise sheep and so on. Now, he did not, on the other hand, think that one was a higher thing than the other. Both were truly wonderful. If you can raise sheep well, if you can do a beautiful garden, this is just as important and just as great as studying all sorts of philosophy and writing books on philosophy. He felt that there was, that's another part of his teaching, is that everybody has something that they are born to do. He called that, the word for that in Slavonic is srodnost, that one is born for something, right? And if we're doing it, then we will be the happiest person in the world. If we follow what we really are. And that's why he said it's so important to find out who you really are, right? And once you find out what you really are, what you have a bent for, and you follow that, that will give you the greatest joy. And it wouldn't be necessarily making great amounts of money. It might, what you're doing might give you great amounts of money, and if it does give you great amounts of money, that's very good. But you should not be hoarding that money. You should be using that money to be a blessing to the world. And if you do that, then that money will bring you lots of joy. If you don't do that, then that money will be a curse for you as well. And of course, he had some, notably this chap Kowaliński, they were wealthy people, and he stayed with them, and he valued them, and they valued him. So it was that sort of view that he had, that everybody had a particular place to fill in this world, and it was God-given, and if you found it and you fit into it, it would work beautifully. But it was also, it's not fatalistic in the senses that you were not coerced to do it, right? There's no coercion. You're not forced to do it. It's just that if you do it, if you do live the way that you should live, this is what's going to make you truly happy and truly peaceful. That's the thing.
Yeah. So what is his Hryhoriy Skovoroda's attitude towards the violence? Or did he had anything in his work about it?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that he actually specifically tackled that, but knowing in general, the sense that I get from him is that he would definitely not approve of it. He would definitely not think that this is a good thing, but that violence would be a good thing. He definitely was a man who believed that there should be freedom, that people should have the freedom to grow in the direction that God had given them to grow. That was truly important. Interesting. He was the descendant of Cossacks. His father was a Cossack. Sava Skovoroda. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, at some point of time, that if God's willing, we're going to be talking about Cossacks as well, because It's a very interesting history and very interesting story, and quite often it's had been kidnapped or hijacked by narrative tellers, versus the historical or objective truth of that. I actually, when you talk about Skovoroda, in Pacific National Exhibition in 1991, there was a really nice exhibit on Kozaki because it was Ukrainian pavilion at SPNE, and I was volunteering there, and there come a gentleman who who was a specialist on Kozaki, and he was telling me that you see those boots, they are not properly painted because you cannot wear those boots when you're riding a horse. And he was just like truly immersed into that Kazakh history. So when I had asked him, I said to him, so why do you do that? And he said, well, I am from Dnipropetrovsk Oblast and I have done research on Kazakh for all my life. He said it was very unpopular at some point of time because I needed to fit my narrative to the narrative of the state. But he said, at least I found out that one of my ancestors was from Skovoroda family, so he was quite interesting.
Oh,
Yeah, I had a contact with him for a good 8 or 10 years, and then I think he passed away. He was an older fella, but he was such an amazing storyteller. He was a wealth of knowledge on the Cossacks and their rituals and rites and attitudes. So, but that's I guess for another conversation. Otchem, we will. There's 4 minutes left till 9 o'clock. Anything that you would like to mention about Skovoroda? His worldview. His attitude towards his attitudes towards the society. No, well, you talked about society, but inter-ethnical relationship and all of this stuff, and especially what was happening in Ukraine at that point of time, when 1700s, like when Sich was destroyed, and where Cossacks were diminished and moved to Dunai, and some of them to Siberia, and some of them to Don, and all of this stuff. Is there anything interesting that you can?
He does mention this. He does refer to this as very tragic happenings there in Ukraine at that time. He spoke very very tragically about this. This was a terrible thing, but again, most of what he was talking about primarily was talking about the inner life, the life of the spirit, and how that should how that should guide us in our daily living. And primarily, he said, if you follow what your spirit is going towards, you will be happy, and as more and more people do it, you will have a happy, peaceful, and good society. He believed that was the way to go.
Wow.
And he felt that his post, what he was supposed to do, was he was supposed to write and teach about it, and that's what he did. And he's also called, by the way, he's called the wandering philosopher, because he would wander. He would go from place to place. Maybe not so much as people think. There was a kind of a popular legend that he would go gather plain people and sit down with them and teach them things and so on. Apparently, that's not what he did. But he would go from place to place. But it would be to give to teach in universities and give lessons like that and so on. He would do that.
Well, that's really interesting. It's quite often, we want our fantasy about something that had happened in the past to become reality in somebody's life who lived in the past, and the same thing happens with Skovoroda, because we fantasize, give him attributes that he perhaps did not have. So he was the one that did not go towards the uprising and fighting against something. He was talking about the inner being, like inner peace.
That's right. Yeah, he would definitely not have been calling for taking up arms, violent revolution. He would not say that. Although it might be your srodnost, in fact, to be a soldier. But if you were to be a soldier, well, then what you ought to do is you ought to be following justice and being obedient and so on. You should not be oppressing other people and so on. If that was your srodnost, the thing you were born to do, the innate goal that you had, it might be that. What would be the preferred srodnost? I suppose it would be. I don't really know what I would say about that. Perhaps a farmer. Perhaps a farmer. I think that would be a preferred srodnost, to be working with the earth, making the earth give its fruits and give it to other people. I think that would be great. But that's if that was your srodnost. If your srodnost was something else, the things you were born to do was something else, then you could not be happy to be a farmer. You would have to be, if it was, for example, writing books, that's what you should be doing. If it was to be working in the government, that's what you should be doing. But again, each person should be doing it to the best of their abilities. It should not be just for personal gain. It would be because you are following a good and beautiful path that has been prepared for you to be walking along.
Otcem, a quick question about this. How does it measure up to Calvinist predestination versus that srodnost?
There is some similarity in that it means that you were born to do something, right? You were born to do something. But with predestination, it is almost as though Calvin is saying, well, he is in fact saying that some people are born to be saved, born for heaven, and some are born for hell, right? Skovoroda would not agree with that. From my perspective, everybody is born to live a happy and noble life here on earth, and of course, that's the main focus of what he's talking about: to live a happy, pleasant, productive life here on earth. And what happens after that? Well, obviously, it was not something that he feared. It was something that he, judging by the way he died, he did not speak about heavenly bliss and heavenly blessings and so on, except as these heavenly blessings and bliss would be reflected in a life truly well lived here on earth, according to the gifts, or to the srodnost, the gift. Oh, there's a word for it. I forget which word I would have used for it, because I primarily would use srodnost. I would say something like congeniality, something that you are born for, right? An innate quality that is given to us, something which we are born for. It is innate. Somebody is born to be a teacher. Somebody is born to be a clergy person. Somebody is born to be a farmer, and so on. And if you find that and you follow that, that will give you the greatest joy. And actually, this is what a person's life, especially the early life, ought to be directed towards, to find out what it is that one should be doing.
It's interesting, Otcem, what you're saying, because the more you talk about this srodnost, the more it reminds me of words of Saint Seraphim of Saro, who said that the kingdom, every person is born already with all the gifts of kingdom, all the gifts of the kingdom of God, it's in him. It just, as the more we pray, the more we come closer in charity to one another and so on, the more we discover those gifts we discover in us under all of those layers of social calamities and stuff like that, So when you started talking about srodnost and understand how it was understood with Hryhoriy Skovoroda's writings, it's kind of just reminded me more, not as much of Calvinist as more as of the definition of human being who was born was the gifts of the kingdom, right, given into him in the way.
Yes. Something that Seraphim of Sarov would say. By the way, I remember now what the Ukrainian word for сродність would be. It would be вродженість.
Вродженість. Wow.
Вродженість. Ти є вроджений для цього. You know?
Yeah. Цікаво. Дуже-дуже цікава отже лекція. На превеликий жаль, ніхто не запитався запитань, але то нічого. Значить,
No questions. You ask questions.
Well, тому що для мене це, how would you say it? I guess I'm getting older, you know, because the older I get, the more interested I am in all of those things that had happened in my land, you know, like in Ukraine, Ukrainians in Canada, you know. We had a discussion last Monday with Dr. Roman Yerenyuk about history of Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Canada. And it was a fantastic lecture, you know, because truly lots of people who had watched this, you know, did not know about this, you know. And for me, it's again, like listening to this, I rediscover something new every time. Next Monday, we're hoping to have a conversation with Buduchny's Credit Union financial manager, as well as, not financial manager, Buduchny's and Ukrainian Credit Union investment specialists. They'll be talking next Monday. And the Tuesday, of course, after that, we're going to be having a conversation with Father Bogdan Hladyo about tithing in the church, and especially in this difficult time, and how their church have done that. So that's for the next week. And then week after, of course, Thanksgiving, you know, and Father Roman Bozhik and Dr. Roman Yerenyuk are still coming. And also we're going to have a treat talking to Father Dr. Roman Ritzar. Otec Ihor knows who he is. And
yes.
Ritzar is going to be talking about kenosis of kenotic theology of Metropolitan Anthony Bloom. And of course, I'm always looking forward to that, because I found Anthony Bloom to be a truly descendant of the, how do you say it, of all this monastic tradition of Athonite monks, you know, Russian Athonite monks, Athonite monks. So, that leads us to the end of the question period.
I see that Ivan Romanko has ventured to, I think, provide his translation for srodnost, which is destiny. I think that's a good word, except you should add an adjective to it. Your inborn destiny. What the destiny you are born to follow.
Wow. That's really.
Except the one thing destiny, though, is it shows some kind of an end point, that you're going towards an end point. I don't think srodnost would necessarily be an end point. It would be an ongoing situation. As long as you're alive, you should be following this. And if you're following this all your life, well, the destiny, well, it's the person who called you to live this way has probably prepared something beyond this as well. But his main thing was focusing not on what is to be at the end of life or the direction we go to, but to live that life in the way that we are meant to be living it here and now, and the way that the gifts. I think what you said about Seraphim of Sarov, that we are born with the kingdom within us. The gifts that we have within us, we should be unfolding them and manifesting them, and that is following the goal, the inborn destiny, if you want to say.
Wow, that's awesome. Otje, I think that would be the end of our conversation today, Otje. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for talking upon such a short notice too, because I wanted that to keep the traditional Monday discussions, you know, and Monday, and next week it will be Monday and Tuesday discussions, you know, as it gives an opportunity for people to be exposed to different opinions, different theological concepts, different knowledge, and hopefully useful for, if nothing else, for our salvation. Та й таке воно. Отче, я тоді скажу молитву, якщо можна, ви поблагословите.
Congratulations, good work you're doing, Father.
Дякую, дякую. З вашими молитвами, Отче.
Нехай будуть милості Господа Бога і спаси нашого. Ісуса Христа з усіми нами. Амінь. The path of our informed destiny. Амінь. Okay.
Амінь.
God
Амінь to
bless.
that.
Bye-bye.
Дякую, отче.